Behringer XR18 and OBS right now. Let's go! This is the PC version today, but if you need the Mac version, it's going to be posted up here and down below, so watch whichever one makes the most sense for you. Okay, the very first thing you need to do is get the Behringer USB audio driver for PC. So you're going to come to the Behringer.com website, you're going to go to Downloads, and then in this first column, you're going to go to Mixers, then you're going to go to Digital Stage Box Mixers, all XR18, and over here you can choose your software. You can come down to drivers and USB audio, and here you go. Here's the latest one right here. So download that driver, install it, and then come on back here for the next steps. Our next step is to make sure that our Behringer mixer is set up for the proper amount of channel outputs over USB. So we're going to come into our Xr edit window. Don't be confused with it floating over OBS. That's literally just to save some space here. But inside the Xr edit, we're going to go to our setup tab. And then under setup, we want to click on the audio MIDI tab. And this is where USB interface comes up. I can't remember honestly off the top of my head which one it's set to by default, but you have a choice of 18 by 18 channels or 2 by 2. If you're only ever going to use 1 to 2 channels in either direction to output or intake sound, then you can put it on 2 by 2. But if you want the full functionality of the mixer, you're going to set it to 18 by 18. So the next thing we need to do is tell our computer that we want to output all of our PC sound into our XR18 so that we can monitor it through our speakers. Obviously, if you don't want to do that, then you can skip this step, but this is what you do. You're going to come to your start menu and you're going to go to settings and go into system, go into sound, and then here is where you can choose your output device. Now, if you were using a DAW, you would have all 18 channels of this available for input and output. But because we're not using a DAW, we're just using the regular internal pathways of Windows, and this also applies to OBS. When we get there, you'll see it's the same. We are limited to a maximum of 8 channels. So you can output it as 1 to 2, or Behringer 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7, 8, or you can do 1 to 8. In most cases, you are probably going to want to choose just a stereo pair, like output 1 and 2. So we're going to go with that for this tutorial. Behringer Xr out 1 to 2. Now that we've done that, that's going to let us output anything we play inside the PC to our mixer so that we can hear it through the speakers attached to the mixer itself. Keep in mind when you're in this selection screen that if you chose the 2 by 2 USB interface option in the Xr edit software, some of these choices I've just listed will not be available to you. Okay, now we need to set up a couple of channels in our Xr edit to receive the USB returns that are coming from the computer. So let's go into Xr edit. And instead of just being on the mixer tab or the channel tab here, what we're actually going to look at is the input tab, because it has everything available to us that we're going to be talking about for the next little bit. And I want to start by saying this. Our channel strips, which are all these faders we have here in the Xr edit software. Channel 1 does not have to be channel 1. Channel 2 does not have to be channel 2. A channel strip is just a place where we can put what we want. By default, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, but we can change these to anything we want. This is just important to understand that you can lay this out and move signal around from place to place based on what works best for you. And that's why I've chosen the input tab here. So our analog inputs, which are the physical inputs on the mixer where you would plug an instrument or a microphone, you can choose whatever one you want here. So I'm on channel 1. If I was going to plug an instrument or a mic into channel 1, then I would leave this here under analog input, and I would make sure that this was set to mic line analog to digital. In this case, we're going to be using USB, so we're going to leave it over here. But I could also go over to channel 10 here, and if I wanted to use the microphone in input 1, I can. I can change this, we'll back over to AD, and I can change the input for 10. Instead of it being input 10, I can change it to input 1. So I can move physical inputs to any channel strip I want, and I can move USB returns to any channel strip I want exactly the same way. That's just good to understand. You can lay this out in any way you want. We'll leave it as it is for now. Actually, I'll put this back to 10 just to avoid confusion. And then what we're going to do is come back over to channel strip 1. So we set our USB returns. So the output of the PC we set to Behringer 1 and 2. So channel strip 1 and 2 I'm actually going to use for USB return 1 and 2. The first thing I want to do is I want to hit stereo link. This has now turned these two faders, 1 and 2, into a stereo pair. And if we go back to our mixer tab, we can see that our channel 1 is panned left and our channel 2 is panned right. Great, it's a stereo pair. And I'm selecting USB on both of them and making sure that they are patched correctly. USB 1 return should be patched to channel 1, and USB 2 return should be patched to channel 2. Great. Again, move that somewhere else if you need to, but we're just going with 1-to-1 here to make it as simple as possible. So now that we've set these two channels up that way, any audio we play out of our PC will show up on these two channels. So let's just do an example of that. Let me bring this up here. I'm going to play this YouTube clip, and you can see that we've got signals showing up. If I bring these faders up with my main left-right fader unmuted and brought up to a reasonable level, we will hear this through my speakers. Another channel, we're not duplicating a signal. Cool, so we know that that's working. Anything the PC outputs is now showing up on USB return 1 and 2 on these two channel strips that we set up, channel strip 1 and 2 in this case. With these couple of steps out of the way, now we can actually go into OBS and set things up there. So let's hide this window. And the first thing we're going to want to do in OBS is we're going to go to our settings tab. And then we're going to go to audio, and you can see we've got a whole bunch of global audio devices here. Desktop audio and desktop audio 2 are basically outputs. You can think of them that way. And if we chose Behringer out 1 and 2, it's kind of the same thing that we just did down here to play back all our audio. Now, I've done it this way through the actual computer itself, through the sound settings, because I want everything to be available on the output going into the mixer so that I can hear it with the speakers. We could have left that with something else selected and then chosen desktop audio here to match the out 1 and 2 of Behringer, but that's not what we did. You do have that option. For now, for what we're doing today, you can actually ignore desktop audio and audio 2. What we're going to focus on is the mic auxiliary inputs. So we've got 4 of those. Here on the first one, we're going to open it up and we are going to choose Behringer in. We're actually going to choose, let's choose 3 to 4. I'll explain why in a minute, but let's find Behringer 3 to 4. It's not here because I set mine to 1, 2. Let's go back into the setup, and you see I've got it on 2 channels. So I'm going to set this to 18 by 18, and we're going to give it a second for it to refresh itself, and then we should have the options available in OBS that we want. Okay, let's have a look again. Audio, we're going to go into mic auxiliary audio, the first one, and now that it's refreshed itself, we have additional choices. So instead of choosing Behringer in 1 and 2, which I could do, I'm going to choose 3 and 4, and I'll explain that as we go along. Choose that, click apply, click OK, and then we can come out here and you can see that we have a mic aux added here in our audio mixer, and you can see there's already signal on it. And the reason there's already signal is because I have a microphone, and this microphone is currently plugged into input 3. If we have a look at our Xr edit software, you can see there's signal here on channel 3. So if we go in here to our mic aux and we go to properties, you can see that it's already set to Behringer 3 and 4 because that's what we chose in our settings window. There's no other choices here for us that do anything that we need to worry about, so we can just leave that as is. I just wanted you to see that you can, in fact, go back in here into properties and change this to something else if you want, even after you've set it up in the settings tab. Okay, so we've got signal coming in, we can see it, but it's only on one side, it's on the left side. Why is that? Well, that's because this is plugged into channel 3, and our input here is a stereo pair. So it's 3 and 4, 3 being the left side, 4 being the right side. So there isn't very much you can do in a PC to solve this problem. You could always plug something into channel 4 and have have your input 3 on the left side and the other input on the right side, but that's not generally what people are going to want to do. So what you can do is, in this window, right click and choose Advanced Audio Properties. So in this window, you can see for the mic aux, we have a mono button. If I click this on, we're going to see that it duplicates the input on 3 over to 3 and 4 and puts it on both sides, turning it into a mono signal. And there we go. So we have a matched signal on both sides. The kind of bummer about this is you're dropping a channel. So if you want to come back into your settings and set up additional inputs, you're already down an input. Unfortunately, this is just the way it works with OBS and XR18 on a PC. There isn't really much of a way around it. So now that you know that, you can think about how best to manage your inputs. Because we have up to 8 inputs, you could do 1 and 2, and 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. That's very viable. But right now we have this set to 3 and 4, and I said I would explain why. So let me do that right now. I'm going to close this advanced audio window. So the reason I did this was purely for the sake of simplicity and not to confuse you right off the bat. I could move this back over to 1, and I will in just a second to show you. But basically, because we set our returns coming back on 1 and 2, I didn't want to confuse things immediately by also having the microphone plugged into input 1. I know I said I could move it over, and we will talk about that in a second, but really what I wanted to do was just have this separated so that we could see signal in one place and then route it elsewhere and know that we have a separated signal coming back. So very quickly, I'm going to show you that happening. Great, we're seeing signal. It's on both sides. That's what we want. How do we hear it? Because we're not hearing it right now. And if we look at here, we're not seeing it come back on our returns on 1 and 2. So we're going to come back into OBS, go to Advanced Audio Properties again, and we are going to change our audio monitoring from off to one of the other 2 selections. I'm going to do monitor and output. And now I've done that. Now if we look back at this software, we can see that the signal is now coming in. So if I bring these up with my master also up, I'm going to hear this coming back from OBS through the speakers attached to the XR mixer. So let's do that. Check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2. There it is. We've got signal coming back. Just to verify, let's go back into Advanced Audio Properties and turn monitoring back off. Come back over to this software and you can see it's gone, and I'm raising this fader and we have nothing. So that is the basic signal flow of how we get something into OBS and how we get it back from OBS to the mixer and out of the speakers so we can hear it. So with that explained, I'm now going to switch this microphone back over to 1 just to show you what options you have. So I'm pulling it out of 3 and I'm putting it into 1. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come back in here. We're going to go to the properties for this input and we're going to change it to Behringer in 1 and 2. Click OK, and you can see the signal there. That's great. Let's jump back over. Okay, we're seeing it in OBS, but we're not seeing it anywhere here. Why? Well, we've got monitoring turned off. If I come back into Advanced Audio Properties and turn monitoring back on, we'll see it in that software. So there it is. So that's the return from the computer, but we're not seeing the actual mic itself anywhere. So let's just close this and let's jump back here. Let's turn monitoring off. Go back to the Xr software. Okay, we're not seeing it anywhere. Well, if I have this channel selected, come back to my input tab. If I change this over to mic line, now we can see the microphone here. So even though we're not looking at the analog to digital conversion, or specifically the analog input, it's still active. It is still happening. I can have things plugged into 1 and 2. I can set the gain if I need to. And then I can stop looking at the analog to digital. I can jump back over to USB and only use these 2 channel strips to monitor what's coming back. But if I need to, I can jump back into the input. I can adjust gain. I can adjust anything else I need to on the physical input. So you have the ability to jump back and forth. You also have the ability to use the physical inputs on the same channel strips as the USB returns. You just have to jump between. Now, the other thing I said you could do is you can just actually move this. So I had it plugged into 3, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the channel strip 3, and instead of having it selected for 3, I'm going to put it to 1. So great, you can see it there now. This is physically plugged into input 1. We are seeing it from input 1, but on channel strip 3, and channel strip 1 and 2 are still set aside for the returns from our PC. So what this allows me to do is I can have these set full time to USB so that I don't have to jump back and forth. And now I can come into channel strip 3 and adjust my gain if I need to. It's a quick way to have access to both things at one time. I know that's a little confusing, which is why I didn't go down this path immediately, but hopefully that sheds some light on things so you understand the more advanced signal path here. Okay, so maybe at this point you're saying, yeah, great, we've got signal in, we've got signal out, but maybe I don't want this to be visible or active at all times. Maybe I want this to be seen or source specific. Well, you can do that too. So let's start here by removing this device. So we'll go into settings, and I'm going to go to audio, and I'm going to put this back to disabled. Apply. Okay, so you can see we've got nothing here. So here under scenes and then under sources, we can either click on the plus button or we can right click, go to add, and choose audio input capture. Name it whatever you want. So let's call it microphone. And then we have the same choice here that we had in our settings menu. So we are going to set this to Behringer in 1 and 2. You can do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever you want to do. We're going to go with 1, 2, because that's what I've been using. And let's just see if we've got signal. There we go. We've got signal on that 1 and 2. Again, only on the left side. So we need to do the same thing we did before. Right click, advanced audio properties, and set this to mono. And now we have it on both sides. So this is just to show you everything is the same, but now that we've added it in this manner, it is only scene and source specific. So if I added another scene, let's call it scene 2, you can see it's gone, both from our sources and from the audio mixer. But if I go back to the main scene, there it is. So you have both ways of adding an input into your OBS system. And so now you might also be saying, hey, great, we can send individual or, well, stereo pairs of channels to OBS, but what if I want to send a full mix? What if I have a whole band playing and I've got the mix I want on my XR18? Can I send that full mix to OBS? Yes, you absolutely can. And so here's how to do that. Let's go back into our XR Edit software, and we're going to go to the In-Out tab. This is where we set up our sends, our returns, our physical inputs, etc. So what we're going to look at here is the USB Sends tab. And you can see that right now it's set 1 through 18, which may or may not be the default. The default might also be 1 to 16 plus left, right. You will know by looking at your system what the default is. Doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to move USB 1 and 2 over to left and right. So USB 1 is now sending the left channel from the mixer, and USB 2 is now sending the right channel from the mixer. So what that means is now any mix we have here on our system is going to go out our main left and right mix like it would for a normal mix, but it's going to show up on channels 1 and 2 in our OBS. So here's my microphone. If I bring this up, it's going to go out. But you'll notice I've actually got my main fader down now instead of up, but we're still seeing signal in OBS. This is set to 1, 2. So why are we seeing signal? Well, let's go back to our in and out tab here. The color of these matter. You can see down here the colors are listed for you and what they do. Currently, they are set to red, which is analog. So that means it's taking the signal right after the input and after the gain stage. So what we want to do is maybe change these. Let's change our active tap point, let's do all the way at the other end of things. Let's go post fader. So I'm going to change these to post fader. So if I close that window, now you can see we've lost signal in OBS, but that means I now have to bring this up. And once I bring up the master fader for the main left-right mix, this whole mix is now going out to OBS on channels 1 and 2. Awesome. But here is something super, super important that you need to be aware of. Because, let's just jump back in here. Because we have channel strip 1 and 2, I've pulled everything else down. Because we have channel strip 1 and 2 set as the return from OBS, and because we are now using a full mix out on the left-right, anything we bring up in the mix is going to go out left-right and go into OBS. So this can potentially be a problem for you. You can very easily create a feedback loop. So what exactly do I mean? Well, let's pull this down for now. You can see I've got my microphone signal here, and if I bring this up and I bring up my main, check, 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 1, 2, check, 1, 2, you can hear it in the speakers. Awesome. Also, when I bring this up, you can see that the signal is going to OBS, but if we go into advanced audio properties and turn our monitoring from off back to on, that means anything coming out of OBS is going to show up here. Potential issue. Because I have to raise the faders to hear it through the main mix, it's now going to the main mix, which we are also sending to OBS. So if I bring this up right now, while I'm speaking, the signal is going to go out the main left-right. It's going to go into OBS, but then OBS is going to spit it right back out, and then it's going to go back in again. And we've got a big circle now, a big loop. So if I bring this up, it's going to cause feedback and duplications and phasing, and it's going to run away, and it's going to be awful. And I'm going to do it right now so you can see it happen in real time. Let's do it. Let's bring this up just a bit. Check, 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 1, 2, check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2. Yeah, that got real bad real quick. So if you are going to send a full mix on your left-right, be very, very careful, because you can very easily create a feedback loop for yourself by bringing up your OBS monitoring back into the same feed you are sending out to OBS. Okay, but what if we need to be able to monitor and send a full mix? Is there a way to do that? Yeah, of course there is. Instead of using the main left-right output, you can actually use one of your aux or your buses to send a full mix. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to create a stereo bus. So let's choose bus 1. And we're going to go to the input tab once we have selected bus 1. Sorry, we want to go to the channel tab. My bad. And you can see here we've got a stereo link. If I click this, you can see we've now created a stereo link between bus 1 and bus 2. So now we have a stereo output on aux 1, aux 2, which is the same as bus 1, bus 2. So any stereo or proper mix I send to bus 1 is also going to go to bus 2, and those two things are going to leave the mixer out of aux 1 and aux 2. But can we send them on the USB? Yeah, we can. So let's go back to our in-out, and let's change this from being 1, 2 to left-right. Let's change it to bus 1 and bus 2. So now we're sending our full mix out on USB sends 1 and 2, but it's taking the feed from our aux/bus 1 and 2 instead of left-right. So if I close this and I choose my bus 1, well, we know we've got this microphone here on 3. So if I bring this up, that's how much signal I'm now sending to both bus 1 and bus 2. See, it doesn't change. And if I bring this down and unmute it, and bring this up, we are now seeing signal going into OBS, because OBS is looking still in the same place, which is USB 1 and 2. If you need more information on how to correctly send signal to your auxes, I have a video which will be linked up here and down below on how that actually functions in this mixer. So there you go, friends. Now you know how to get signal into OBS, how to get it back from OBS into the mixer to hear it, and you know how to send a full mix on either your left, right, or your auxes if that's something you need to do. I hope this was interesting, entertaining, educational, and if it was any of those three things, please like, please share, and please subscribe. You can also check us out on Patreon, or you can even join the channel down below, or if any of the videos we have here are super useful to you, then you can do super thanks down below. And any of those things help the channel in a huge way. So thanks to everybody who's already subscribed and who's already contributed. And until we see you next time, thanks for watching here on QuickEZ. Bye, everybody.